Tell me, how would your friends describe you?
Oh my gosh. They might say I'm brave, and often with things like having a special needs child, they say, I don't know how you do it. People I love would describe me as supportive, a good listener, and loud yet quiet.
When have you felt the most vulnerable?
Oh my gosh. So I was expecting my second child, and I was 20 weeks, and I was like, is it gonna be a girl or a boy? That's all I cared about. And then they call the next morning and say, you need to come in as soon as possible. And they say, the good news is your son is alive. And when you hear that, you're like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? They said he had a neural tube defect called spina bifida, and there could be even more issues. And so they sent me to some specialists, and ultimately I ended up having surgery on him while I was still pregnant. It's called in utero surgery. And I was 24 weeks along by then. And that is the worst thing I've ever done. Because instead of a wound, a C-section wound healing and getting smaller, I was getting more and more pregnant, and he was getting bigger and bigger. And then I started bleeding at 29 weeks, and I got life-flighted. And they delivered him at 30, and they life-flighted him to a bigger hospital, and they did another surgery on him. And then by the time I was healed up enough to get to them, he had to have another surgery. And then that led to his brain. Afterwards, the soft spot on his head was super sunken in. And it was really scary to see such a limp, placid baby uninvolved in the world around them. And after a lot of tests and scans and not communicating with the doctors, like they didn't tell us what's going on, they told us that he had a brain injury, and that it didn't bleed, it drained, the fluid in his brain drained too fast from his shunt, and it led to bleeding in every part of his brain. And it blocked it from maturing. They said he would probably be quadriplegic at best and developmentally delayed, which is a blanket term for saying they might not have many social or educational skills. And when they told us that, I think was the most vulnerable time I experienced. And working through that with them and with him, and watching him tread his own path, even though he's like a 3-pound preemie. It was a time of letting go and stop trying to have plans for life, and just embrace what we were given. And now he's a little over 2, and he's learned how to touch my face, and he smiles every time he sees anybody. He just lights up. He goes, ah, hi. And he can snuggle into your shoulder. He can suck on his hands. And he likes to lick at water from a syringe. So that's the miracle part of it, just watching progress instead of expecting it.
If you could share some wisdom with the world, what would it be?
I see life as a journey. And we might have a map, but we don't necessarily know the end destination. I think that the more we try to plan and say, I want to get to that peak there, the less we see, and the more challenges we find. But when we look at where we're at, and when we take the pieces that we're given, and we see the people around us, then see them as they are, and love them as as they are. And I think that all our journeys become integrated, and when we stop trying to plan, we find joy along the journey. I'm not saying don't have an end goal. I'm saying don't get surprised if there's a massive river in the way and you have to hike an extra 20 miles to get to the other side.
Thank you so much.
Woo-hoo.